Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today I'm going to be doing my big end of year ranking for 2024, ranking all the horror movies I've seen from worst to best, in which there are 53 horror movies here. Yeah, so last year I only had like 36 horror movies, but this year we got 53. So hopefully next year I can keep raising the bar there, but 53 ain't a bad number I don't think. For brand new releases. I know there's people who've seen like 200 horror movies out there and stuff. Yeah, I'm not quite there. I don't watch everything that comes out. And just bearing that in mind, if a movie you have seen is not on this list, it's just because I haven't seen it. I am talking about every single horror movie here. Now, just to let you guys know, there may be some movies in here that aren't full horror, but it's going to give me a chance to talk about them anyway. Some like family-friendly horror, comedy horror, thrillers with horror elements. But most of these, I would say, deserve to be in this horror genre list, I think. Now, just going on that as well, I have done my top 10 horror movies of 2024, but I didn't include any of them types of movies in. I just went for pure horror. And there are two movies in here that have broke that top 10. So the top 10 may seem a little bit different here, just because we have like adjacent horror movies in this entire list, and two of them did make the top 10. So yeah, I'll explain more on that when I get to them movies, but I'm not going to spend too much time on each one, guys, because we'll be here forever. So I'm just going to kind of go over these quite quickly. So let's just start now with the worst movie that I watched in 2024 in 53rd place, and that is The Exorcism, guys. Yes, this film was one that just absolutely bored me to tears. You got Russell Crowe in there coming back into the horror genre after doing The Pope's Exorcist last year, which was great, wasn't it? Not. And he's a great actor, but I just don't know if this guy has the right feel to be in the horror genre. I don't know. I don't know if it's quite working there. Although he was probably the best thing about this movie, I suppose, but there wasn't much to shout about here. It's basically just him starring in a cursed movie. It's kind of a play on The Exorcist and all the cursed stuff that was happening backstage. You know, if you're into horror or you've been into horror for a long time, you'll probably know about that. It's a kind of a play on that without saying it's about The Exorcist. And he's kind of like an actor who's getting a bit of a resurgence now. He's trying to do a comeback, basically, but it's finding it very, very difficult to deal with it because of his past, and this director really putting pressure on him to perform and stuff. But it kind of just deals with a lot of drama, a lot of family stuff in there, and Russell Crowe's personal struggles, really. On paper, it wasn't too bad of an idea, but it's in 53rd place because I absolutely just wanted this movie to end. It was just so dull, so depressing, and I was absolutely fighting with my tiredness to try and get through this movie. Not because I was tired, just because the movie was really boring the hell out of me. And I think the worst thing you can do with a movie is make it boring. So unfortunately, The Exorcism is in last place here. Coming up next, we do have The Mousetrap, which will probably be last on virtually everyone's list. But the slasher fan in me just put it above The Exorcism. There's not too much in it because this movie is absolutely terrible. And we're getting quite a few of these movies now, aren't they? Characters that are going into the public domain, and this was a play on Steamboat Willie, although this has nothing to do with Steamboat Willie, apart from one scene where a character is watching the Steamboat Willie cartoon in this little back office of this arcade. That's it. And weirdly, it all takes place in an arcade, not a boat, like Steamboat Willie probably should. Kind of nothing to do with the cartoon there. We've got this terrible looking killer going around in this Mickey Mouse costume. The kills are all off screen apart from one near the end, which they must have had a bit of money left over to kind of throw a bit of blood and creativity in there. But it was just nothing. I mean, I have no problem calling this a terrible movie because I feel like the people who made this just done it for a quick cash grab. Like a lot of these movies that we're probably going to get now. But I did actually enjoy Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, which some people might call blasphemy. But this was just, if you think Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was bad, man, this is just 10 levels below it. It is horrendous. And none of the characters were good or anything. No one to get invested in. The killer can also teleport for some unknown reason. So yeah, the slasher fan in me could tolerate it just enough to put it above The Exorcism, but it probably is a worse movie if I'm being honest. But I just put it one step higher because I like the subgenre way more than the religious horror subgenre. So that is The Mousetrap. Next up, we have Black Cab, starring Nick Frost, who's kind of coming into the horror genre a little bit there, and it was just brought one out recently that's come to Sky Movies. I forgot the name of it, something to do with a holiday resort or something. I haven't checked that one out yet, but this one sees him as a sinister cab driver, and when I heard about that, I thought, that's a cool little present, a horror movie about a cab driver. I am British, we have black cabs all about the place here, so I could sort of relate to that a little bit there, and I thought, I'm excited to see what Nick Frost can do with this character, and it just sees him and a couple in the back of the cab, and it starts to go down a sinister, dark route, really, with this Nick Frost character. And I thought that could have been a cool premise, but what this movie does is become way too over-ambitious for its own good and go down the supernatural route when we start to go down these certain roads in the cab and stuff. And it just fell apart for me right there. I also did not like the couple in this movie in the back of the cab. I just didn't care about either of them. They both seem like unlikable characters to me. And Nick Frost done okay in the role, but nothing to make you warrant watching this film or anything. So yeah, pretty dull movie, unfortunately. That is Black Cab. Next up, we have No Way Up, a shark movie with an interesting premise where this plane crashes into the ocean and creates this air pocket where these characters are stuck on the plane under the ocean and they can't escape because these sharks are just swarming around the plane, ready to pounce on them. So it becomes like one of them isolated movies, kind of like The Fall, which I really liked. That came out a couple of years ago. But this one, yeah, the problem is with it, when you do these movies, you kind of always have to throw more obstacles at the characters, but there is just a long, drawn-out sequence here where the characters are just basically exchanging dialogue for a very long time. I mean, nothing's really happening in the middle of the movie. When things do get going, the sharks, when they kill people and stuff, it's so poorly edited that you can't even enjoy the kills, really, because it's just kind of loads of different cuts on the screen at one time, and it's kind of sore on the eye, really. You got Cole Meany in there, who's another draw for me in this movie. As this, if you ordered an FBI agent off Wish, this is what you get. I could not take him seriously at all. I thought he was really bad in the movie, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, characters you just can't get behind, don't care about any of them. The young girl and the old couple, could not care for them whatsoever. It picks up a little bit with the last 15 minutes, but nothing special or anything. It's not like a great third act or anything like that. Just a pretty dull shark movie, which we get a lot of, don't we? So that is No Way Up. Next up, we have Imaginary, which I was really excited for, actually. I actually think I put it on my most anticipated horror movies of 2024 list, believe it or not. And for me, this one just didn't work at all. I mean, it felt like the worst of Blumhouse movies. It might actually be the worst Blumhouse movie I've seen. And this one sees this young kid who befriends this imaginary, well, it's like a teddy bear, but it's an imaginary friend in there. And when she befriends this teddy bear, things start to go down a very dark route and bad things start to happen within this home. It's got that story, the family background, which we've seen too many times before, where the dad has got a new wife and the dad's two kids don't like her. But by the end of the movie, when it all comes together, the kids, they're all friends. Yeah, kind of seen that one coming. But the third act goes around a Hellraiser 2 Hellbound type story path. And by that point, I was just thinking the movie had fell apart for me after a very, very long slog of a first hour. And when it got to this bit where this like labyrinth's happening in the house and stuff, I was just like, yeah, I'm out. I want this movie to just end now. Thought the creature design was awful and stuff. I was just done by that point. And a lot of people say this is the best part of the movie, but yeah, I actually like the big, slow slog of a build-up more than that third act, what it was all building to. But Imaginary, not a great movie at all. Next up, we have Destroy All Neighbors, which I thought looked really fun. The poster was really drawing my attention. It had like that old school 80s vibe going to it. You got Alex Winter in there from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey with all this prosthetic makeup on and stuff. I thought he looked awesome. And this is basically about this guy who is an upcoming, well, he wants to get his music career on track, and as he's writing his songs and trying to play his instruments in his house, this next door neighbor who's just moved in, who's Alex Winter, who really looks like a ghastly character in this movie, is really disturbing him all the time, and he really can't concentrate. He goes over there to confront him, and his life just goes down a downward spiral path with this character. I thought this movie started off pretty good. I was enjoying it, and then a lot of stuff happens that you just don't care for. It relies way too much on the puppetry, practical effects, trying to throw back to the 80s, way too much there. And the main character, I really started to dislike even more as the movie goes on. It's got a very, very bleak, no hope ending as well, which sometimes I like, but here I was just like, oh man, really? We just done all that for that? So yeah, unfortunately, Destroy All Neighbours wasn't great. Next up, we have Watchers, which was one of my most disappointing movies of the year. I probably put enough on it just because Ashana Night Shyamalan was directing this, and to call it a disappointment just because she's directing it, because her father is M. Night Shyamalan, is probably a little bit unfair, but I was really intrigued to see how her directional debut was going to go, mixed with the trailer, which I thought looked really interesting. But this sees Dakota Fanning's character running through these woods. I think something chasing her or something, can't quite fully remember, and she comes across like this compound that's made of glass, and she runs in there for safety, and these 4 characters or 3 characters that have been living there for a while aren't allowed to come out of this compound because these creatures are outside that will kill them, and all they have to do every night is basically stand by the window so these creatures can watch them, kind of like a TV show. Which is interesting concept, I thought. But when we get more into the lore about these creatures, this woods that they're in, this compound, it started to become like a fantasy movie instead of a horror film, and I started to care less and less. There was also some logic issues here with bad writing, because there's this rug in the middle of the room, and one of the characters, Dakota Fanning, I think it is, the new character in the like this place, decides to lift it up, and there's an entry to a basement down there where they find some information. And some of the characters have been living in here for months, maybe even over a year. I can't quite remember now. This woman in there who's been there for ages, and none of them ever thought to lift the rug up. I mean, what are you going to do for 24 hours a day? Obviously, you're going to move stuff around, aren't you? You'll probably do anything to escape here, or just find every nook and cranny in this room. But no, none of them ever looked in that time. So yeah, Watchers, pretty good opening 20-30 minutes, and fizzled out and fell off a cliff. That is the Watchers. Next up is I Saw the TV Glow. Now, this is one where I was fighting a bit of sleep, guys. Not because it was boring, although it wasn't really great, but I was actually tired watching this movie, and I was really struggling. I had to have them waking up and rewind it to see what was going on. So I have probably unfairly put it on the list, to be honest. I probably should give this movie another shot. But from what I did see, I mean, I've seen the whole movie, but I just had to keep waking up and rewinding it and stuff. I kind of got lost as to what the hell was going on here. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that it's not the easiest movie to understand anyway. It's lots of hidden metaphors and stuff, and that's what I kind of got from it. But this is kind of like a throwback to the 90s, where these 2 characters become friends over this TV show. They go to each other's house and just watch this TV show every single weekend or whatever, and become really close friends. And the TV show aspects of it was cool, I thought. They had all these like little monsters on the TV show that were coolly designed and stuff, but the movie is not really about that. It's barely even a horror film. I think this is something to do with gender identity and stuff, and the director who made it was like a trans. So yeah, it kind of went over my head as all them hidden metaphors and stuff, probably because I was so tired watching it. So maybe I need to give this another go, but for right now, I just didn't really enjoy this movie whatsoever. So that is I Saw the TV Glow. Unfairly maybe on this list. Maybe I could have left that out, but I put it on there anyway. Next up, we have Time Cut. Now, talking about horror movies that might be adjacent horror films and stuff, this one felt like a real teen chick flick film that we used to get in the late 90s, early 2000s. Not a horror movie, but there are slasher elements in there. There's a killer going around killing people, and it felt like it had the same vibe as Totally Killer that came out last year, which I really enjoyed. But it's the same sort of concept where this girl has to go back and save her sister's life from this killer. She's never actually met her sister. She's like 20 years older. She goes back to try and basically save her from this killer that's going around, and she can actually meet the sister she never had. But yeah, I mean, the kills in this movie were barely there when they did. They were just so tame. The character of the main protagonist, I couldn't get behind at all. I just didn't really like her, really. And the ending is just so unbelievable. I thought they would really go there. Really? That's the end we're going with? Oh my god, one of the worst endings of the year for me personally. But yeah, there was so many similarities to Totally Killer with the story, like I said, but even the mask of the killer looked exactly the same. But Avril Lavigne's Complicated is played about 5 times throughout this movie, and I actually really like that song, but when it's played in a movie like this, it just takes away any horror aspects and throws it into a corner of movies that just really isn't for me. So if you want a good Back to the Future type horror movie, check out Totally Killer. Not this, that is Time Cut. Next up is Azrael, and a lot of people have actually liked this film, and I was quite expecting something from it after hearing all the early reactions and stuff, but this is another one that I just kind of found really dull and a slog to get through, really. I don't quite get what fully was going on here, but I believe it's a post-apocalyptic film, I think. And the people who don't believe in God and Jesus have all been left on planet Earth while everyone who's religious has been taken to heaven. I think that's the premise. Also, the people on the planet Earth can't talk. No one talks in this movie. It's kind of like a silent film with sound effects here and there. And it's just basically Samara Weaving trying to make her way through planet Earth, basically, with all these dangers in front of her. And she's not gotta just face up to other humans who are fighting for rations and stuff. There's actually these monsters that live in the woods, and the best part of the movie involved them with the kills and stuff. I thought there was some really gruesome, bloody ass violent kills here, but that was my favorite part of the movie, along with Samara Weaving kicking some ass. But everything else just felt like a bit of a drag and a slog to get through. Very grey, dark movie that one I'm probably never going to return to be honest. So that is Azrael. Next up we have Baghead. Now this was one I was quite excited for, but in the back of my mind I knew it probably wasn't going to be great. But I like the premise of it. This sees this young girl who, his father has died, and he has left her this pub, and she goes over to, I think it's Ireland, and she goes and runs this pub. And she discovers downstairs that there is this demon slash creature down there with this bag over its head. And it kind of looks like the guy with the chainsaw from Resident Evil 4 running around the village there. And when characters speak to this demon, they can basically talk to someone from the dead. So there's this guy who keeps coming to the pub and asking if he can talk to his ex-wife through this demon. And he has conversations with his wife every day there, but he's paying this young girl who runs the pub, and it's a win-win situation. He gets to speak to his wife, although not really. It's just the demon in his wife's skin. And she is getting a nice little paycheck there. Obviously, though, you can't speak to this demon for more than like 2 minutes. It's kind of like the talk to me scenario. Otherwise, bad things will happen. And of course, this guy ends up going overboard, and everything bad and the horror start to come into play there. Interesting concept, but it just felt like the execution wasn't there. There was way too many jump scares, way too many forced sound effects, and in the end, it just fizzled out, really. So yeah, I did like the main protagonist in this movie, the young woman who runs the pub. I think she was in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes as well. Really sorry I forgot her name. She was pretty good in this. Overall, just a real dull movie, really. But it's watchable. I just didn't. Yeah, I mean, take it or leave it. Put it that way. That is Baghead. Next up, we have Never Let Go, and this is one of them movies that I kind of like, where you're questioning each of the characters. So Halle Berry and her 2 sons are living in this forest, in this post-apocalyptic world, and she's got these ropes tied to them, and they're quite long ropes, but it just makes them go so far in the forest, they can't go any further than these ropes take them, because if they go any further, Halle Berry has said, you will be killed by these monsters that are out there, this evil that lives just outside the woods. And one of the boys kind of believes it and the other one doesn't. And you're kind of on the fence here who to believe. Is Halle Berry insane? Is she telling the truth? You know, which one of these kids would you side with? And I like it when movies do that. One of my favourite films that does this ever is Frailty. But there was no answers really given in this film, and it's left open to interpretation, which I didn't really like. I kind of want the answers when the movie is teasing me all the way through. So unfortunately, we kind of didn't get that. I've heard a lot of people say they like that about the movie, where it could be this, it could be that. But for me, I want the answers. You know, I kind of just sat through it and was still scratching my head and questioning it a little bit. Also, some of the demon design and stuff here is kind of just there to kind of shock you. Sorry, to try and force jump scares on you and stuff, and it wasn't working for me at all. But there is a very tense moment in this film involving a dog and whether these characters are going to shoot this dog or not. I won't say too much more than that, but I was like, holy shit, what's going to happen here? It did have me on the edge of my seat. Not bad, but I wanted a little bit more from it. I was expecting a little bit more going by the trailers and stuff. That is Never Let Go. Okay, this is probably the first movie that's going to get me in a lot of trouble in the comments. Remember, guys, this is just my opinion, but that is the first Omen. A lot of people seem to really love this film. Now, what I will say is Arcacia Stevenson has an eye for directing. I will be looking out what she's doing in future because there's some really nice visual shots in here. Interesting the way she points the camera here and there. Nell Tigerfree put a pretty good performance in. And I was excited for this because of all the early buzz, early reactions. I am a big fan of the Omen trilogy, not the fourth one, the remake either. But the Omen trilogy I really do like. And I thought a prequel to the Omen, that might be interesting. And it kind of plays like a pregnancy movie, really. You know, like a dark, religious pregnancy movie. There's another one that's quite like this called Immaculate, which I'll talk about in a bit. But this movie just kind of dragged. It kind of felt like a real slog. And I was really kind of bored at times in this film. There was some cool little moments in there. The acting and the directing kind of keep you on board. But when it's all said and done, I don't think this film really matters. And what I mean by that is this goes for a huge climactic ending. Obviously, we all know that it's going to end with the birth of Damien. That's what we're leading into. It's a prequel to the Omen. But when I've seen the Omen 3, The Final Conflict, does it really matter what happens at the end of this movie? Not really. Also, they try to rewrite history a little bit involving the Jackal and stuff. And it also leaves on a little bit of a cliffhanger where they're going to make another prequel. And it's like, no. That led perfectly into the first film, if that's what you want, from this prequel. But no, they're going to leave it open-ended so they can make another prequel. Come on. Seriously? So yeah, I was really disappointed with this film, guys. I'm not a fan of it. I just did not like it. So yeah, we all got different opinions. I know a lot of people might turn the video off now, but for me, the first Omen just wasn't doing it. That is the first Omen. Next up, we have Tarot. Yes, a lot of people hate this movie. How can you put that above the first Omen? Oh my God. Look, guys, it's not a good movie, okay? But there was more fun had with this film than I had with the first Omen. So I'm going to try not to speak about the first Omen anymore. But this one had an interesting concept. I thought a cursed tarot card deck where these characters, one of them reads like the tarot card out to all the characters in the movie. And each of them is kind of given a fate. But each card that is given them the fate has a certain demon on it. And then all of these characters are start to be killed one by one afterward, like a few days later, they're turning up and dead. And it's kind of like a Final Destination scenario where the kills are made to look like accidents, but us as a viewer get to see that demon that was attached to their card just before the kills happen. So I kind of really like that about the movie, seeing all these different demons turning up. But a lot of the kills were off screen, which didn't help it. They were trying to go for a 12A rating. And the characters you just don't really care about at all. I mean, the guy off Spider-Man was in here. I forgot his name. Tom Holland's Peter Parker's friend. Forgot his name, really sorry. But he was kind of like the most annoying character in this, and he was the most high-profile actor in here. There was a moment involving him in an elevated apartment block that was really, really creepy, I thought. That was the best part of the movie, involving this Jester character. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of them films that just feels like an everyday horror movie. and also follows the same formula of characters get in trouble to try and figure what's out. Then they meet someone who's been through all this before to get help from them, and then they defeat the thing. Yeah, so kind of just the same formula used all the time there. But I didn't hate it, but it wasn't a particularly good film either. So that is Tarot. Next up, we have Stream, which sees this family go to this hotel, and whilst they are there with a few other members of the hotel, these killers are going around killing these characters, and people are actually watching it through the cameras and stuff, betting on who's going to be killed next, how these killers are going to kill these characters and stuff. It's all like a big game, basically. And I thought this had some really interesting kills. I mean, there was some really good gore in here. It kind of went for it at times. I think David Howard Thornton was actually one of these killers, and the killers looked quite good, I thought, with the masks and stuff like that, and some of the movements they were doing. But it was way too long. It's like over a 2-hour movie. The characters, I know I'm saying this a lot, but there are so many characters in horror movies you just don't care for, and here I didn't. I actually thought the acting was terrible as well. Like one of the worst acted movies I've seen all year, from the father and the main female protagonist of this movie. So I just didn't care for them at all, and it kind of just became a little bit of a drag with the runtime. Cool to see some horror legends in there, like Tony Todd and stuff. Tim Curry, I think, makes an appearance at one point, although I think it's in the end credits. So yeah, good to see those in there, but overall, just a very meh movie. So that is Stream. Next up, we have Cuckoo. Now, this was a trailer that really had me intrigued. I thought, this looks awesome. And when it was all said and done, I didn't understand what this movie was going for. Now, I will say that there's some really cool, creepy moments in here that really got under my skin. Dan Stevens was awesome in this film, like he is usually. There's going to be another film I'm just going to speak about in a bit with him in. And I thought this had a lot going for it, but as the film went on, it just kind of stopped making sense. It's basically about, oh, I'm really sorry, I forgot the main actress's name. I know her name and it's escaped me. Anyway, she moves to this little town with her family, and she sees a lot of weird things going on, but her family are kind of ignoring it or don't see the problem, and she can't quite get her head around that. So yeah, it's quite interesting, but overall it kind of just fizzled out. And I hate it when movies make you scratch your head and you kind of have to look up afterwards what the hell was happening. I'm not the only person who thinks that this was a very confusing movie either, but there's nicely shot, some great creepy moments, like I said, and a really good performance from the main actress. I am going to kick myself, man, when I look up the actress's name after this video. Hunter Shaver, yes. So yeah, Hunter Shaver I thought was really good in this, but not a movie that I could ever see myself returning to, unless someone really pushed me to and said, look, you'll see it in a different light second time around, because there was a bit to like. But yeah, a disappointment. That is Cuckoo. Next up, we have stop motion, which I thought was going to be a pretty good concept here. Basically, it's a stop motion director and her mother are trying to make this movie, and her mother is very heavy-handed and always telling her off and stuff. So she decides to start going. I think her mother dies, and she starts to go and decide to do her own little thing and her own movie. And with the help of this young girl who's always giving her pointers and giving negatives on her movie and how she can improve it. And she keeps listening to this little girl to make the movie. And what I did like about it, the more she makes this movie and moves these characters around, the more like it shows the movie on screen. So we get little snippets of how she is making this as the movie goes along, or the movie within the movie. I thought that was all cool, but overall, it's the movie that again dragged and was a little bit of a slog. I just couldn't quite get into it. It's more drama focused, with her and her boyfriend all the time arguing back and forth. It was just characters I don't really like. Interesting concept. It had a twist at the end that I'd seen coming from the very, very start. So yeah, that climax didn't quite hit as hard. It was okay. It was fine. Good, interesting concept that wasn't executed all that well. That is stop motion. Next up, we have Trap, probably my most disappointing movie of the year, guys, from M. Night Shyamalan, because I just expect so much more from Shyamalan, although he has had a few duds in his career, so maybe I should draw it back a little bit in expectation when I go and see his movies. Now, this had a great concept, a serial killer going to a concert with his daughter, and the police surround their SWAT team and stuff, and they're checking every single person who leaves, so he knows he's kind of trapped in there. And following the serial killer as the main protagonist was interesting. I thought Josh Hartnett put a really good performance in. He can kind of switch on his personality as a sinister serial killer and a family man, like a switch, basically. So kudos to him. I thought he was the best thing about this movie by far. And when he's walking around this concert, looking for ways out and stuff, trying to find little hidden areas, I was really interested. I thought it was quite tense, and I was like, I kind of am on the side of the serial killer here, and I kind of want him to get out, which is weird. But Josh Hartnett is just so charming, isn't he? However, when we get into the second half of the movie, the logic issues start to kick in, and it must be one of the most worst written movies I have ever seen. M. Night Shyamalan takes the audience for a fool. He's trying to do a very serious film here, and you can't take logic issues seriously when you're doing a serious film. Like, Josh Hartnett escapes this concert without even being searched, with the biggest pop star in the world in the same car as him. There are moments where he's kind of teleporting at times. Like, one moment, this big pop star, who's played by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, by the way. A lot of people have said this is nepotism, just to get... He made this movie to showcase her voice. That is maybe true. I didn't quite see it fully that way, but maybe that is true. But there's one moment where she gets out of this limo and goes, "The killer's in there!" And there's a crowd of people outside the limo, and they all look in, but Josh Hartnett has already escaped somehow out the back door in a new suit and everything. He gets arrested at one point, and the police are letting him touch things and stuff before he gets led into the car, and he's planting little things here and there the police didn't see. It's so bizarre that M. Night Shyamalan thought that he could do this movie and no one would notice. So yeah, after a great concept, it just fell apart. It was laughably bad in that second act, but it's watchable. But man, I just can't look past the bad writing. So that is Trap. Coming up next is a movie that really everyone seems to have near the bottom of the list and everyone hates, and that is Night Swim. Yeah, I didn't mind this movie. I think Stephen King and me are the only ones who kind of like this film. He put on Twitter that, ignore all the haters, this movie's awesome. I wouldn't quite call it awesome, but I watched it and everyone was telling me how bad it was, and I kept thinking, it wasn't as that bad. It was okay. It's basically about a haunted swimming pool. This family moved to this house, and obviously the swimming pool has a past. People have died in there and stuff, and it's basically causing carnage when this family move in. Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a haunted swimming pool movie before, so that was interesting take. I mean, the characters of the family I really liked. Wyatt Russell's in there, an actor I think highly of. I liked the kid characters. I liked his wife who played, I thought they were a family that were fine. And it was doing really well for the first hour. Like, the first hour, I was like all on board and stuff. I was like, this is kind of cool. It is the third act where it kind of falls apart when we start getting the reveals and stuff of the swimming pool. What's happening here? Why it's happening? Follows the very same format as Tarot, what I mentioned there, where characters get into a problem, seek someone out, and then they try and overcome the problem. Very, very simple formula. And there's lots of baseball stuff in here, weirdly. Yeah, it's Wyatt Russell is an ex-baseball player, and it kind of plays on that a little bit, tries to bring the sport of baseball into the movie, which kind of feels a little bit out of place. But overall, I didn't hate this movie. I would probably watch it again. I wouldn't be in a rush to, but I wouldn't be against watching it again. But yeah, a lot of people do hate this film, so don't take my word for it. That is Night Swim. Next up, we have Daddy's Head, which is one of the creepiest films I've seen all year. This is this widow who's been left with her ex-husband's son. So it's not really her child, but them two are just living in this really expensive house in the middle of the countryside together. And they don't quite really see eye to eye. She has got to make a little bit of a choice whether to keep parenting this child or to kind of let him go. And they're trying to mend things and stuff, but when this demon comes into the fray, all hell starts to break loose, basically, and some scary shit really happens. But what really makes this movie creepy more than anything is the demon takes the face of the ex-husband slash dad who's died, and this kid believes his dad is really still alive and is talking to him through the walls and the vents and stuff, telling him to come into the garden because that's where this demon is kind of living and based, and keeps trying to get the kid out there. And this widow, the sort of mother of the family, starts to get brought into it as well. And it really creates this weird dynamic where you kind of start rooting for both of these characters, but they aren't really rooting for each other, if you like. And I thought this was really interesting. With a bit more budget, they could have done a lot more with this, I think. You know, it's a very small movie, but the creepy stuff that is done here I thought was awesome, and there was some really creepy, scary scenes that made me kind of sit back a little bit. It's probably the second scariest movie I've seen all year, after another one that is going to be more near my top 10. But yeah, if you want some real bone-chilling things, this one is worth checking out, and I believe it's on Shudder, so that is Daddy's Head. Next up, we have Blink Twice, more of a thriller movie, this one. I did say there was going to be thrillers here with horror elements, but this one was interesting. This is Channing Tatum in a different role for him, really, and he is like this billionaire, and he invites these two women onto his island with a bunch of other friends and just says they're going to all have a good time. And these two women are only like waitresses and stuff, so they just say, yeah, we're coming, and they are very well looked after and stuff. But things aren't really to what they seem, as one of the characters starts noticing things that aren't quite right, and she starts telling the other characters and stuff, and they kind of don't believe her. And when one of the other characters starts to see sort of the same things, they start to sort of work together to uncover what the hell is going on here. And is this Channing Tatum character really what he seems and all his friends, or are they up to something else? And it was a very interesting movie. Concept was great, and I was locked in for a good hour there. But when we get to the third act and stuff, it kind of just falls flat, and I was like, oh, that's what we're doing here. Maybe we could have done something a little bit different or a little bit better here. But it's a good idea what Zoe Kravitz on her directorial debut had here. I just don't think it was executed all that well in the third act. But overall, it's not bad. It's an enjoyable movie. There's some great characters in here. You got the young kid off The Sixth Sense, Haley Joel Osment, is it? Haley Joel Osment, I think his name is. He's a fun character. You've got Christian Slater in a more fun, you know, jumpy ass role here. I haven't seen for a while in a movie. And Channing Tatum, I don't think this is the best performance by him, and this is a real chance to show his chops here, and I thought he was just okay in the movie, in something that is something totally different for him. But yeah, I don't think he's the greatest actor in the world, and I think he's okay. Blink Twice wasn't bad. Next up, we have Infested. I was really looking forward to this movie, guys, because I am terrified of spiders, and I thought, yeah, bring some spider horror on there. Maybe it'll make my skin crawl, and I got it did at times. This sees a bunch of characters in a flat that has been infested with spiders, and they've got to kind of make their way down to the bottom floor and try and get out of here. But there are so many spiders in this apartment block that, you know, it really is hard, and they are attacking people and stuff like that, killing people. So yeah, they are basically toxic spiders, if you like. And Sebastian Vinacek, I think his name is, who's going to be doing one of the future Evil Dead movies, really does have a great eye with the camera. There's one moment here that he spirals around the corridor for the spiders, and you're like, oh my god, these characters have got to run through this corridor. Spiders all over the place. He uses the use of mirrors very, very well. Like, there's a character brushing her teeth at one point, and she spits out a toothpaste or whatever, and then you see all the spiders through the mirror coming into the bathroom, and you're like, holy shit, she's in there with some spiders. He ramps up the tension at times. My biggest problem with this movie was the characters. I just didn't like them. They're all like ex-criminals or petty thieves, and I just could not root for any of them, really. That was the main drawback for me. If they had better characters in here, or more relatable characters, I think this movie could have worked so much better. But it did touch on my arachnophobia just a bit there. And overall, it was a pretty fun movie. So that is Infested. Next up, we have another shark movie, Under Paris, which came straight to Netflix, and I thought this is going to be terrible. It was actually a little bit of a surprise there. It's kind of Jaws mixed with Deep Blue Sea, although not as good as either of them movies. What I mean by that is we've got like a mayor sort of thing going on in the city where these shark attacks are happening, but the mayor kind of wants this triathlon sort of event to go ahead. And there's a lot of people against that. So you got that whole sort of side of it. And then we've got like the sharks themselves, kind of like the sharks from Deep Blue Sea, like mutated sharks that are basically just very, very dangerous. Let's put it that way. Now, this movie does take a while to get going, but once it does, there's some fun to be had here. Granted, the CGI on the sharks isn't amazing or anything, but there are moments where lots of characters are just killed in like a couple of scenes here, and the sharks are just ripping them apart. I thought that was really cool to see. I like the two main characters of the movie as well, and it was kind of just fun. But I gotta say, one of the worst ever decisions from a character happens in this movie. Guess who by? Yes, the mayor. And I was just like, oh no, please don't do this. What the hell are you doing? But interesting to take it all through like a river going throughout the city there in the Paris. I forgot the name of the river, sorry. But yeah, instead of like the ocean and stuff like that. Real interesting one. So it's kind of like Sharks in the City. Yeah, I thought this was fine. Pretty enjoyable shark movie. That is Under Paris. Coming in number 30, we do have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people hated that first movie, but even if you hated it, I do think you will agree that this is a step up. We've got better production design here. You can tell there's more budget, and the character sort of costumes on the villains are way better. And I thought it was quite clever to make that first movie a movie within a movie. What I mean by that is, in this film, characters are watching that first film and going, oh, this is all based on that thing that happened down the road. And what they don't know is this actually did happen with these characters. Yeah, you'll know what I mean when you watch the movie. It'll be explained a lot better there. But I thought some of the kills in this movie were great. The first opening 10 minutes is really gnarly, really fucking goes for it. And I was like, holy shit, this movie isn't holding back whatsoever. There is more killers in this movie. It's not just Pooh and Tigger. You've got Owl in here not just Pooh and Piglet, but we've got I think it's Pooh, Piglet, Tigger and Owl. And Owl in this movie, man, oh, he's such a vicious character. He's my favourite villain by far, but he is just tearing people to shreds. I think the Christopher Robin character in this movie was way better. You kind of get behind him because the whole town doesn't believe him and kind of thinks he's the killer that done these mass killings years ago. So he kind of got to sort of defend himself there. No one believes him. We get a bit of backstory as how these Winnie the Pooh characters came about. In the third act, it kind of loses novelty because it's just going for kill after kill after kill and trying to get as many kills on screen as it can. And that's where they lose the creativity that they had in the first 10-20 minutes there. But overall, it's still a fun time, easily watchable, digestible slasher film. And this is what makes you maybe able to get on board with these public domain films. So we'll see what they do next. I believe they're going to be doing a Pooh-niverse with all these other characters and stuff. Let's see how that goes. That is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Next up, we have Woman of the Hour, Anna Kendrick's directional debut, I believe. And this is all based on a true story about this woman who goes on a dating show, and one of the contestants that she can pick from, it's called Blind Date here in the UK, where you can't see the contestants, but you ask them questions, and then you pick one of them to go on a date with, or I think they go on holiday, to be honest, for a week somewhere, whatever. But one of the characters in the show is actually a real life active serial killer, and this was actually a true story. I thought the opening of this film really sets it up about this killer and what he's all about. He is a really menacing, vicious character. I forgot the guy who plays him, Donnie or something. I'm really sorry about that, guys. When you're talking about so many films at once, it's kind of hard to keep them up. But I thought everything to do with him pulled me into the movie. I thought it was a really good performance. There's a moment with Anna Kendrick and him in a car park that was one of the most tense scenes of the entire film. I was really feeling for Anna Kendrick's character here. The whole blind date show bit that happens in the middle, I didn't care for it. I thought that whole thing went on way too long. They nailed what the 70s would look like and stuff like that. But that bit, really, I just couldn't get it. It kind of felt too comedic for me in a film like this. There's some brutal stuff happening here. And this main killer was just, oh man, he was horrible. Really, really was. When it tells you at the end of the movie what he actually may have done in real life, you're just like, holy fucking shit, I'm looking this guy up right now, really? Anna Kendrick does okay here for a directional debut. I mean, there's not really any amazing shots with the camera or anything like that. It's just a pretty straightforward film. But it was fine. I thought the main draw here is the guy who plays the killer, though. He was awesome. That is Woman of the Hour. Next up, we have Apartment 7A. Now, this is a film that is a prequel to Rosemary's Baby from 1968, the horror classic. And what I will say about that is the director, I think she's a fan of that original film. She nailed the aesthetic and the look of Rosemary's Baby here. It really did feel like we were going back to the 60s and that actual apartment block. Julia Garner, who's the main protagonist in this movie, put in a really great performance as the woman who throws herself off the building or was pushed, whatever you want to interpret it as. So great performance in here. I like the whole sort of dance sort of thing that we had going on with Julia Garner's character. She's really into dance and that plays a pivotal part in the movie. But apart from that, it feels more like a remake than a prequel. It's the exact same story that we had in Rosemary's Baby with a different character. I think it's definitely a fun movie. It's definitely something that you can watch and have a good time with. But Rosemary's Baby's fans may hate this. And it's one of them, guys. You're either going to love it or hate it, basically. But I enjoyed it. It's not as good as Rosemary's Baby. It feels like the same sort of film, but it feels like a remake more than a prequel. Put it that way. Now, Diane Wiest is in this movie. You know, the mother from Lost Boys, of course. And a lot of people have said that her performance was awesome. As I forgot the characters' names who live next door. You know which ones I mean, who are trying to draw Mia Farrow's character in and be all friendly with her in Rosemary's Baby. They're in here. And I thought her performance was really annoying. Like, I just didn't like her character whatsoever. And I can't believe so many people were praising her, but her voice really, really grated on me. At one point, she says to Julia Garner's character, "Settle down, little onion." And I'm like... But overall, a pretty entertaining prequel/remake. That is Apartment 7A. Next up, we have Heretic. Yes, a lot of people will probably think this should be a lot higher on my list. I've seen people put this in their top 5 and stuff, and you know what? I can see why. There's a lot to like here. Hugh Grant's performance is one of the best of the year, to be honest. I thought he was absolutely awesome in this. I would love to see him in more horror. This basically has these 2 religious girls who knock at Hugh Grant's house because he's asked for them. And when they go in, Hugh Grant starts talking about religion to them and stuff like that and questioning their religion. And they kind of find themselves stuck in this house and can't really get out. And Hugh Grant basically tests their faith of how they're going to get out this house, basically, and questions their religion. I think the movie does well to not be too heavy-handed in, is religion a load of shit, or should people really believe in it? It sort of questions both with the dialogue and stuff, and you're like, that is an interesting take for a horror movie. As we get further and further through this house, these girls who are trying to get through it to get out, it just becomes a lot more interesting. However, when it was done, I was like, I like that movie. I didn't love it. It was interesting, but I didn't love it as much as everyone else. It was clever, but a lot of people were just like, holy fucking shit. I just can't believe how good this movie is. And I thought, yeah, it was interesting. Good concept. ask a lot of questions, but it was fine. I just didn't love it as much as anyone else, but Hugh Grant is fucking awesome in this film. So that is Heretic. Next up is going to be The Strangers Chapter 1. Yes, I know my ranking is all over the place. For some people here, a lot of people hate this film. And whilst I do think it was one of the most disappointing movies of the year, I still quite enjoyed it because I absolutely hate the original film. I just don't like it whatsoever, mainly because of the main two characters. And this felt like a remake to that, but with better characters. Like, a lot of people don't like the characters in this one because of the stupid decisions they make, and they do make some awful decisions, but they're more charming to be around. And I like the way they were kind of really in love and romantically, always all over each other and stuff, compared to Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman's character in that original film. I just hated them two characters. Also, I think this movie is moved at a better pace than the original film. The original film is long, drawn-out, dull scenes. Here, we get a little bit more of the action. It takes a little bit of A Stranger's Prayer at Night and throws that in there, just a little bit there. And I just had an enjoyable enough time with it. My big head scratcher with this film, and why I was looking forward to it so much, is because I thought Rennie Harlan had this amazing idea, because he's making a trilogy out of these movies, and it just felt like a remake of the original, but better for me. And I was like, really? I mean, I thought this was going to go in a totally different direction. I watched Strangers Pray at Night just before this one. I thought, okay, if we get some more of that, that could be awesome. No, it was just a better remake of the original for me. And a lot of people would disagree with that because they love The Strangers. I'm not a fan of that movie whatsoever. Yeah, it was entertaining enough, put it that way. And with the climax, I'm kind of looking forward to Chapter 2 now. I just wish they would have done something totally different with this one, but yeah, it's a better version of the original. So that is The Strangers Chapter 1. Next up, we have Immaculate, and this follows Sydney Sweeney's character, who is going to a convent, is it? To become a nun and give her life to Jesus, really. And she's only like 20 or something in this film. She's like a really young woman. And when she's in this convent, she's really set on this path. But weird things start to happen when she gets there. And this place has a history and a dark, sinister thing going on in the background, and we uncover that more as the movie goes on. And it just keeps the mystery going. You're always interested to know what the hell's going on here. You really do latch onto Sydney Sweeney's character. She's got that charisma, that charm. I think a lot of people like to see her and stuff, and I definitely do. I thought she was awesome in this. But what it's all about for me is the third act of this movie. This film goes absolutely insane, and some real gnarly shit happens with an ending that I was just like, holy fucking shit. And Sydney Sweeney's acting ability in that final scene was great, I thought. It has a lot of familiarity to the first Omen in its story, but this one was just way more enjoyable to me. It's half an hour less as well. It just gets to the point quicker. And I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, Immaculate was pretty damn awesome. Next up, we have In a Violent Nature. I was really looking forward to this movie, guys. And I gotta say, it didn't quite hit the heights that I thought it was going to do, but I still really enjoyed this one. Like I said earlier on, I am a slasher fan. And the slasher fan in me, weirdly, found this to be a very relaxing film. I had just been to see A Quiet Place day one just before watching this. So there's a lot of scenes in A Quiet Place day one that are kind of like loud and action orientated. And then I just went home, watched this one on the couch, and I was like, oh man, this is really chilled. It's basically where we follow the killer who's going around the woods killing these camp counselors, basically like Friday the 13th. But this time we follow the killer, and the camera is always kind of just behind him as he walks around these woods killing people. And a lot of people have said this is boring, but I don't quite agree with that, because I feel like there's always something going on. Like, as the characters walking towards this cabin, characters will be going in and out or driving away by cars. There's always something to look at. Characters who see the killer are running away and stuff, and we're still behind the killer's sort of point of view there. So I do think there's enough going on when we're following him around. The kills here are fucking great. I mean, there's a kill involving yoga. Most of you will probably have heard that by now. And it is so gnarly, so violent, so disturbing, but awesome to watch. My biggest problem with this movie is where we switch perspectives in the last 20 minutes, and I was just like, why are we doing this? Why? Are you trying to do a whole final girl thing here? Oh, the last 20 minutes really ruined it for me. But overall, I thought this was a pretty enjoyable film, and we are getting a second one. So interested to see if they do this whole behind the killer look again, or just try and make this character, who does get a bit of a backstory in this film, become a little bit of a mini horror icon. Who knows? We'll see. That is In a Violent Nature. Next up, we have A Milk and Cereal, a film I believe that was made for $900, and most of the budget went on one of the actors who was in this movie because he's a professional actor. But this sees these two characters, and it's a found footage movie. It was put on YouTube for free by one of the stars of this movie, which is mad. And I had a lot of buzz about it, so I'm going to go and watch that. And it was damn really good. Like one of the biggest surprises of the year, really. Probably should have put it in my top 5 most surprising movies, to be honest, but oh, hey ho. But this sees these two characters who play pranks on each other. They've got their own YouTube channel, and these pranks really start to go too far, and people start to die and stuff, and it's all kind of a character study of one of these characters. Now, I'm not going to say too much more than that, but he's up to something, put it that way. And yeah, it was just really interesting to watch this. I think it's only like 60 minutes long, so you can absolutely fly by when watching this movie. But the main character, I forgot his name, man. So I'm really sorry. He's the director of the film as well. Just had this presence about him. You can't really take your eyes off him. But yeah, it's really well done. And as things start to spiral out of control, you're just on the journey. You're just like, how are these characters going to kind of get out of what the trouble they've got into? How's this all going to pan out? Who's going to die? Put it that way. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. It's on YouTube for free. That is Milk and Cereal. Next up, we have Salem's Lot. Now, this did make my most surprising horror movies of the year. I'm not the biggest fan of the original Salem's Lot. I got to it very late in life, and I just thought it was okay. I have always wanted to rewatch that movie, but this one might just work for me a little bit better there. I'm not going to lie. It's more of a modern take on it, although it is sort of all set in the sort of 70s, I believe, or whenever this book takes place. I haven't read the book, but it just had a better visual look to it. It took you back to that time. I think the characters, the main protagonists who are romantically sort of trying to get involved here, are great to follow. I really latched onto them. There's this kid Mark as well in this movie who just wants to kick the vampire's ass, and he's only like 10 years old and stuff, but he's such a cool character. And I like how we build up the whole vampirism that's come to this town, basically. You know, it's just really interesting to see these weird characters sort of bring the darkness to this town of Jerusalem's Lot. And the third act was fun as well, just seeing all these vampires going up against the human characters. It's a better paced movie for me. I know the original was a mini series, but it's 3 hours long and it kind of does drag a little bit. But here, this is much more nicely paced, I feel. Had a little bit of a Stranger Things vibe going on for it as well, involving child characters and stuff. I just enjoyed it. That is Salem's Lot. Next up, we have Lisa Frankenstein, and this feels very Tim Burton-esque, I think. We got Catherine Newton in there, who's this weird, wacky character who is a bit of an outcast at school, and she is obsessed with this boy, or this boy who's died and his grave, and she decides to bring him back from the dead in a Frankenstein tales type of way, hence the title name. And we're all taking place in the 80s here as well and stuff. Really gives a fun aesthetic of that time period. And I think Catherine Newton and the boy in this, Cole Sprouse, who is Ross Geller's son, Ben, in Friends, really have a fun sort of chemistry going on screen here. I mean, he can't talk. He's kind of like a zombie and stuff, but she's kind of living in the house. It's just a real fun, zany film. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, the stepmother character in this as well is just a total bitch. I like all the stuff involving hair scenes and stuff like that. It's a fun movie with a fun vibe, entertaining as hell, and that whole 80s feel of it just, pumps it up a little bit there. So that is Lisa Frankenstein. Next up, we have another spider movie called Sting, but instead of a lot of spiders infesting a apartment block, this is just one spider infesting an apartment block. However, this is an alien type spider, and it grows and grows more as the movie goes on. Now, I've got to say, this one didn't really play on my arachnophobia as much as Infested, but the young girl in this was a good character, I thought, and it had like a Critters 80s type feel to it, where this creature is basically just taking people out, you know. I thought it was a really fun movie that really brought back that feel of the B movie type movies. Sting is an awesome, nasty little bastard, I thought, and just seeing him sort of devour these bodies and stuff was awesome. And it had like a fun vibe with the characters as well. You know, they've got like this pest control guy at the start and stuff, who, it just carries that 80s sort of feel to it, I think. But yeah, really bringing back the Critters, Gremlins type vibes here in the form of a spider. And the fact that it's an alien spider just made it all that fun, I thought. So yeah, that is Sting. Next up, we have Mr. Crockett, which is probably one of the most interesting concepts in a movie I've seen all year. This is Elvis Nostalgo, I think his name is, who plays this Mr. Crockett character fantastically. He's kind of like a Fred Rogers type sort of character who has this TV show where all kids come on to his TV show, and he's kind of just, you know, it's kind of like Barney and Friends. If you guys have seen Barney the dinosaur here in the UK, it's kind of like that, but with a human as the TV show hosts. And these are all like on a VHS tape. And when the kids watch this VHS tape, if their parents are mean to them, Mr. Crockett will come out of the VCR, murder the parents in a vicious way, and then take the child character into his world. Now, that is a very interesting concept, I think, there, and it is executed quite well, I thought. It could have been so much more on a better budget, but what they've got here, I think there's lots of puppetry, practical effect work done so well here, especially on Mr. Crockett's sort of kind of sideshow hosts that he uses. And when the kids go into this Mr. Crockett's world, when they're really there, it's even more, it's kind of like dark and sort of hellish looking compared to what they see on the videotape. So it kind of looks totally different. So that was a nice little shake up there. And it's all about this kid who's been dragged into the VCR. His mother, I think they kill the father. His mother is looking everywhere for him, basically, and trying to find out this Mr. Crockett, unravel what the hell's going on and stuff like that. But yeah, great performance from Elvis Nostalgo. I really hope I'm getting that right. He was awesome as Mr. Crockett. Really felt like one of them kids' TV daytime presenters. And I would like to see a sequel to this. So yeah, I thought this was pretty damn good. And it was just shoved on Disney Plus, and Disney didn't even advertise it. So if you want to watch it, it's on there. So that is Mr. Crockett. Next up is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. A lot of people were very disappointed with this film. But for me, I thought it was a pretty decent Ghostbusters film. You know, I enjoyed it. The biggest complaint about this movie is there's a lot going on, and I can't agree with that. For example, Finn Wolfhard's character, who I thought was going to be the kind of the leader of the group going into this movie, is basically given nothing to do. So they just pit him against Slimer in this room, and we see about 3 scenes with him in for about 30 seconds each, and that's it. He kind of shunned to one side, but they feel like they have to include him. Things like that are kind of weird, but I think it's still got a good enough story and a good enough fun time to make it a Ghostbusters movie out of this. But there are too many Ghostbusters, let's put it that way. And the whole Frozen Empire thing, I thought that could have been done so much more better if they'd done it for longer, but we kind of only see it in the last 20-30 minutes there. But I liked Ray's sort of stance in this. You know, he's kind of like a helper to the new Ghostbusters. The new Ghostbusters going back to New York had that fun vibe. It feels like Ghostbusters had to go back to New York now, doesn't it? I mean, that one movie, Afterlife, outside of it was fine, but we always had to go back here. And yeah, some of the ghosts was fun and stuff like that. You know, I had a good time. There was lots of little memory berries as well, like nostalgia here with the library and stuff, and you know, that big lion statue outside. it tries to remember all the Ghostbusters fans. Its biggest problem is trying to do too much, but I still had a fun time with it. It's a breeze to get through. I enjoyed it. That is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Next up we have Mads, which came to Shutter, and I think this is a French movie, and it's all done in a one-shot sequence. And my God, this is some of the best directing you will see all year. It's basically about this guy who's coked up to the nines, he's on all sorts of drugs, and he goes to this party, and on his way there, this character jumps in his car who's kind of fucked up and stuff, and it feels like she's been infected by this virus, and from there, things start to escalate with these characters. Now, this takes place in 3 different acts. First act is this guy who's coked up to hell. The second act is his girlfriend, and the third act is the girlfriend's friend. So we see it from 3 different points of view, where these characters are sort of being infected or have to deal with this infection in a certain way. Now, the middle segment of this film, like the first segment was good, and I was really impressed with the directing. The second segment was great directing with one of the best performances of the entire year. The girlfriend of this lad was unbelievable in this movie. Just seeing her sort of get infected with the virus and just go mad and crazy as that second act goes on there was absolutely unbelievable to watch. There's this moment where she throws this guy in the river and sort of does this strange laugh and she's walking away going, ha ha ha! And I thought, wow man, that's fucking awesome. Third act was the least interesting, so unfortunately that's where you want your best part of the movie to be, towards the end, but it was still fine. And just seeing all these police trying to hunt these characters down and how they try and get away, all done in one-shot sequences, was fantastic. I think this was done in 3 different sequences, first, second and third act, and I can believe that because I didn't see any hidden shots or anything like that. It's worth a watch. I love one-shot sequence films or scenes. I'll never get tired of them, and this is some of the best I've seen. But that middle portion, man, the acting, that woman was unbelievable. That is mad. Next up, we have Abigail. Now, this was one of my most disappointing movies of the year, but I still really enjoyed it, hence it being 16th on this list. But I thought I was just going to get everything I wanted from a movie here, a movie by Radio Silence, with I love Ready or Not, I love the Scream movies they made. I was like, okay, Abigail, about a ballerina vampire who's taking all these characters out. Wow, that sounds like it's made for me. And it was fun. It was just a very long film with too many twists and turns on the way. It felt like it was like 20 minutes too long. But the characters we get are really fun here. Dan Stevens, awesome. Melissa Barrera, awesome. Catherine Newton, of course, always awesome. And basically they are being picked off by this 6-year-old vampire called Abigail. And basically, it's kind of like a trick, basically, because she's been put there to feast on them and be this predator. And it's basically like a big setup, basically. And she's chased them all around the house trying to kill each one of them. But we do learn more stuff going on. There's lots of little twists and turns here along the way. And it was fine for 1 or 2 moments, but then it kind of does it way too many times. Also, there's 2 massive character dumps in here that take about 5 minutes each to get round each character. That's all right if you do it once, but the second time I was like, haven't we just done this? But it was fun enough. Great kills, great blood and gore all over the place. Alicia Weir was great as this young vampire. Everyone put a solid performance in, especially Dan Stevens. I just had a few minor problems with it, but I would like to watch this one again. I've kind of had the itch to give it another go, but still high on this list. It was a fun movie, and I'm looking forward to see what Radio Silence can do next. I believe it's going to be Ready or Not too, so I'm looking forward to that. That is Abigail. Next up, we have VHS Beyond, and this was another surprising one because every time one of these come out, there's usually like 2 or 3 stories out of the 5 or 6 that I don't like. But when I got to the 4th story and finished that, I was like, holy shit, I've liked every single one of these stories. Can the 5th one land it? And unfortunately, the 5th story is the worst one that I didn't like. So it was nearly a home run, but it's worth watching for the first 4 stories. I mean, there's one story here that is involving a skydiving moment, and I was like, how the hell are you going to make horror out of that? But they do in such a cool way. And there's another one that's sort of like a first person point of view, kind of like a video game. We're going around this house full of zombies. That was awesome. Another one about a pop star that's got like a dark, sinister past. That was cool as fuck. And one about a dog owner who's very sinister and crazy. This crazy woman who looks after dogs. Fortunately, the fifth story was this woman just going into the desert looking for a UFO, and it was kind of dull and boring. But overall, great VHS movie, probably the best one I've seen. So that is VHS Beyond. Next up, we have probably the most surprising movie of the year, and that is Speak No Evil. I expected nothing from this. It just looked like a shot-for-shot remake of the movie we got a couple of years ago, the Danish film, which was also in English, weirdly, so did we even need another remake? Just felt like Blumhouse was doing a cash grab here. My God, I really enjoyed this in the cinema. Now, a lot of this does feel familiar if you've seen that original film, but there were still so many audience reactions here that really just elevated it for me. Like, all the awkward moments, like, in this movie, people were just like, oh, awkward laughing and stuff, and I was like, this is so fun to be in the cinema. One of my most fun cinema trips all year. But this basically sees James McAvoy and his family become friends with this other family on holiday, and James McAvoy invites them to his countryside home so they can meet up again. And when they get there, it all starts to get a little bit weird and awkward, because James McAvoy is just unhinged in this film, and his wife's a little bit weird as well. And this other couple just feel very awkward. There's a moment where they're kind of doing a sex act in front of them, and my cinema man was laughing her ass off. I couldn't help it myself. But the movie is kind of shot for shot for a lot of it. Although I do think they evolved the two child actors a lot more into the story in this one, which was a welcome addition. But the third act goes totally different. And I like the way we've got both of these movies now, because you can even have the dark, sinister path or the more nicer outcome path, whichever one you pick. So, yeah, I think they've done enough here to change it all up. And I really enjoyed it. But James McAvoy's performance is the absolute best thing about this movie. One of his best performances I've seen him in. You can't take your eyes off the guy. He really does make it all, just a fun time. So that is Speak No Evil. Next up, we have Nosferatu, the last movie from 2024 that I watched. We didn't get it here till January, but I am including it in this list. And this is Robert Eggers' latest film that sees Count Orlok coming to Germany to buy a house, basically. But really, does he want something else involving another character? Now, Robert Eggers is one of the best visual directors out there today. I think he does a great job here with the lighting, the whole look of the time period. Awesome, awesome movie to look at. I think the story, whilst not being the most interesting thing, has enough meat and bones on it with all the other side characters to get you fully invested. I think the first half of the movie, with all the build-up and everything, the mystery, what's around each corner, was awesome. I always wanted to know what the hell this Orlok character was up to. The second half of the movie wasn't executed as well. I don't think the promise kind of lived up to the first half, but this is still a very, very good film. And out of all the movies on this list, this is probably the one I want to rewatch the most, because I just feel like on a rewatch, I might get a bit more out of this knowing what we have in store. But I still give this a positive review. Thought there was a lot to like here. Bill Skarsgård was excellent with the whole look of him as well. But Robert Eggers really does well to hide the look and not really reveal too much until the end, even though he is introduced really early on. Like I said, the use of lighting with the shadows and stuff is awesome. But the voice of Count Orlok, I believe Bill Skarsgård went to opera lessons to deepen his voice a little bit. Man, he just done so well here. But, like I said, the second half of the movie wasn't as good as the first. There was some horror tropes in there that I wouldn't expect from Eggers, like stupid jump scares and sorts of possession character things that we see in the Exorcism subgenre a lot. But still a great movie, solid performances all around. Really looking forward to watching it again. Not Eggers' best, but good enough. So that is Nosferatu. Now, guys, this is the movie that actually came 10th in my ranking, and that is Longlegs. But like I said, there was a couple of movies I did leave out there because I didn't think they were pure horror, and they're going to come up in a minute. But if it's pure horror, this would actually be 10th, but we're 12th in this list. That is Longlegs. Now, I think Osgood Perkins directed this masterfully, one of the best directed movies of the year with all the wide shots he did and everything. Really took you back to a time period of the 90s without bashing you over the head with it. And this basically follows Mika Monroe trying to track down a serial killer called Longlegs, who never ever enters any family's home but manages to kill the entire family. So, very interesting concept. How is this Longlegs character doing this? And Mika Monroe has got to get to the bottom of it, and has a really chilling, creepy vibe about it, involving devil worship and stuff like that. And there is a lot of dark stuff going on here, like sinister things. And as it's all unraveled, I thought that was pretty damn clever when we got to the end. It wasn't the most mind-blowing film or story or reveal, but it was good enough, I thought. I didn't absolutely love the movie as much as everyone else, but it was still solid. And again, like Nosferatu, I would really like to revisit this one. You got a great performance from Mika Monroe here, who's kind of a little bit off in her performance, but there's a reason for that, and when it is all explained towards the end, you just think her performance was even better because of that. You got Nicolas Cage in here, who is just awesome when he's given the screen time. And something, what's his name? Bridge Underwood is his name? Something Underwood, who plays the FBI agent who's kind of leading Mika Monroe. I think he was the most underrated character in this movie. I thought he was awesome. So yeah, solid performances, great little cool horror story in there, and as it goes on, you're just like, where the hell is this going? And I thought it was quite an interesting film and a really cool mystery. So that is Longlegs. Next up we have Oddity. Now, this is one of the, well, when I said Daddy's Head was probably the second scariest movie of the year, this is the scariest. This is Caroline Bracken's character playing two different characters, two sisters, and her sister is killed in this cottage, and she decides to go and investigate the murder of her sister. And as the movie goes on, a lot of things are unraveled with lots of twists and turns along the way. And what makes this movie brilliant is that her sister is kind of like this medium, and she brings this wooden man with her, like this mannequin, which is very, very scary looking and stuff. And it's always in the background of a lot of scenes. And you're just like, when is that going to come into play? Why is that sitting there? It's kind of like this threat throughout the movie. And you're kind of waiting for it to happen, basically. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you know that's there for a reason. And I think the director of this film, was it Michael Donoghue? Was it? Maybe? I can't quite remember his name. I'm really sorry. That might be someone totally different. Done really well by just catching glimpses of this thing in the background. So it's kind of like a ticking time bomb type thing, if you like. But I loved all the reveals, all the twists and turns that we got here. The opening sort of scenes where this woman is killed was jump scare city, but done in such a good way. Like, I really jumped out of my skin at times. I'm not the biggest fan of cheap jump scares, but when they're done well like this, oh my God, they really get me. And it's really tense at times as well. But this movie was quite low budget, I believe, but it just felt way bigger than what it was. I mean, oh my God, it felt like a massive scale budget, probably down to the performances, because everyone brought their A game here, and it just felt like they should be in the biggest movies in the world, because everyone was solid, especially Caroline Bracken, of course. But yeah, a movie that just felt bigger in scale than what it actually was. Really cool story, really creepy film, quite scary at times. I highly recommend it. That is Oddity. Next up we have Arcadian, which is kind of like A Quiet Place, but slightly different with the creatures and what they can kind of do, because they kind of hunt at night instead of reacting to sound. That's kind of the main difference. It's all in a post-apocalyptic world. It's got Nicolas Cage and his two sons living on this kind of farmhouse. And every single night they have to board it up because these creatures are trying to get in and scraping along the doors and stuff like that. Now, one of the kids is kind of with his father and says, yeah, we shouldn't interact with anyone. But the other boy kind of wants to go and meet other people and stuff like that, and kind of wants to disobey his father. So you got that cool little family dynamic there. And there's a whole romance involving the son with this other girl, which I thought was interesting because it gave hope in a world that has no hope, basically. So there was still things for characters to root for in this world. And it all leads to an awesome action-packed third act where these creatures are against the humans. And I was just having the greatest time in that last 30 minutes. I think there's some really creepy stuff involving the creatures in this movie. You're just like, holy shit, they can do that. There's just like unique abilities they've got. And I'm like, holy shit, this is creepy as fuck. So yeah, I really recommend this. This was a real nice surprise for me. If you're a fan of A Quiet Place, I think this will have something for you. It is a bit more on a smaller scale, but didn't take anything away, and it actually did make my top 10 horror movies of the year. So that is Arcadium. Next up is Late Night with the Devil. This was such an interesting film, a very unique one at that. It's kind of half found footage, but not really. I mean, it's not like a shaky cam or anything like that. But the start of the movie, they say something went wrong on this 70s show on Halloween night. This is the show. So you kind of know what I mean there. And it sees David the Smalcian, who is usually the side character in movies, in the lead role here as this TV presenter called Jack Delroy. And he wants to get his ratings back up. And by doing that, he's going to put a big show on called Night Owls. That's the name of his TV show. On Halloween night, and get all these guests on who are kind of things to do with dark pasts, or, you know, have got sinister stories behind them. And each character that he brought on was really, really interesting, I thought. The whole look of the show feels like it belongs in 1977, where this takes place. Real great aesthetic to it. And David Smalcian just spoke to me like I'd been watching this show all my life. It felt like I knew what Night Owls was. It felt like I was a fan, because he just spoke to you through the camera, and he just put an awesome performance in. Very, very happy to see him get this main role. One of the best performances of the year. But when he brings this character on the show, who's got this girl who's claimed to be possessed, that's when shit starts to hit the fan. I won't say too much more than that, but I was just having a great time. You know, it really was an awesome, awesome film, let down by an ending. It's the only thing that held me back, putting a few places higher. I just didn't like the last 10 minutes, but everything else was fantastic. Really creepy vibe to it, really tense, and really, really fun, I would say. You just feel like you're having the best time on the show with the audience members and stuff like that. It is great. I can't wait to watch it again. That is Late Night with the Devil. Next up is Smile 2, and I didn't hold too much hope for this, because I thought, oh, another cash grab because of the success of Smile. Do we really need a sequel to Smile 2? And after I watched it, I thought, that was good. I'm not sure it was as good as the first one. The more I've thought about it, the more I think, yeah, that was actually pretty damn awesome. I think Parker Finn, who is a great director here, upcoming horror director, steps up his A game. Some of the directing in this was awesome. From the opening scene, which was probably one of the greatest moments of 2024, all done in that one-shot sequence, to just basically creepy moments with the choreography. And like there's this one moment where all these characters are coming towards our main character with these smiles on their face, but he done it so well, like choreographed the whole sequence so well. There's a moment where Naomi Scott, the main actress in this, is arguing with Jack Nicholson's son in a car, and the camera is just going left to right. Very, very simple technique, but it feels like you're just in the car with them in the midst of this argument. No, just things like that really made this a well-directed movie. And you got Naomi Scott, who is a much more interesting character than Sosie Bacon, is it? In the first movie. She'd done a great job, by the way, but I just felt this was more interesting because you've got this pop star who's always in the public eye, having this smiling demon curse put on her. And she's trying to get her life back on track, her career back on track, but this thing is kind of stopping it and making it worse. It is never a good time to get attached to this demon, of course, but just having her in the public eye with cameras on her all the time just made for an interesting dynamic, I thought. And Naomi Scott probably put the performance of the year in here. I thought she was absolutely amazing in this movie. If I'd done a top 10 performance of the year, which I still may do, I'm not sure yet, she would probably be number one. I mean, I would have to really consider that. But she was great. You know, she really felt like this woman who was losing her mind. And what I liked about what Parker Finn did here, it feels like he's taking you on the journey with her, and you're losing your mind as well. You're questioning what's real. You're questioning as she's seeing things. And I thought that was such a good way of making this movie. A lot of people have complained about that because it kind of cheats the audience. But no, I don't think that. I felt like I was in her mind, put it that way. And that is all due to the directing and the performance of Naomi Scott. Some really creepy moments in here as well. Like there's one moment this guy just bashes his own head in. So yeah, It's got it all here. Smile 2 was friggin' awesome. Can't wait for part 3. Next up is a movie that I didn't include in my top 10 horror movies because this is a horror comedy, really. More of a comedy, and that is Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Now, I've never been the biggest fan of the original Beetlejuice, but I watched it just before this one and really, really enjoyed it. It really grew on me, and I thought, you know what? I'm excited for Beetlejuice now. And I had a great time with it. A lot of people have complained about this one having too many stories going on, kind of like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. But for me, I don't think that. I think they all played out really well apart from one. And that is involving Monica Bellucci's character, who was introduced early on to be this great villain, and we don't kind of see it again until the end. But I think everything else that was going on played out well. I thought everything came to a suitable climax with each one of them subplots going on and stuff. So yeah, it didn't really bother me at all. You got Jenna Ortega in here as I forgot her name, Winona Ryder's daughter. So it's kind of like showing how much of a legacy sequel that is. They all have to go to the house because the father died, and they have to sort out what's going on with the house and stuff. And Beetlejuice, the curse, has obviously come back, and Michael Keaton is in here once again, playing his wacky ass character that he played all them years ago. But I think the movie does well not to show too much of him, kind of like the first movie does. It didn't kind of like, you know, overplay him or anything. There's enough going on with all the characters to have a lot of fun here. Willem Dafoe, who's playing this old TV actor who's kind of, I think he's dead in the movie, but man, he just was awesome in this film. You know, he could switch on the detective and the actor like that because he's playing kind of two different characters. There's a lot, I love seeing all these characters walk around and how they died with like people kind of got like javelins shoved through them and they're walking around the hallways with this javelin sticking out of them and stuff like that. Yeah, there was a twist in the middle of the movie that I seen coming straight away. And a lot of people have complained that that was over too quick. But because I seen the twist, I feel like it didn't really bother me that much. And I kind of knew where it was going. But I never find a twist with these movies, but this one I kind of did straight away. But overall, really, really fun film. I would be happily watch this again. So that is Beetlejuice. Next up is A Quiet Place Day One, another movie I held no hope for, kind of like Smile 2. I just thought this is a cash grab. Why aren't we carrying on with Emily Blunt's character in Quiet Place Part 3? I thought that's the movie we were going to get, but we didn't. However, this really threw me off because I thought, oh, we're just going to get loads of alien action here, big blockbuster. Let's just see people get ripped apart by these aliens. Yeah, easy money for them. But no, there was actually a really heartwarming story at the core here involving Lupita Nyong'o's character and Joseph Quinn's character. Lupita Nyong'o is kind of suffering from a terminal disease. She's kind of going to die. And that is when all these aliens invade. It's day one, obviously. And she meets Joseph Quinn's character in this movie, and they kind of go on this journey together. And you really do get attached to both these characters and really want them to get out of this situation. And they are probably the least, other ends of the spectrum in terms of personality and everything. And would they be friends if this thing didn't even happen? But they really just form this bond. And I love both performances here. I really cared about both the characters. But if you want some Quiet Place action, that is all here too. I think the blockbuster action, like the set pieces and stuff, the action set pieces were done really well. There's so many tense moments where characters got to keep quiet. That's this movie's bread and butter, isn't it? That was all done excellently. And some great, people being ripped apart and stuff. If you want to see that, you're going to get it here. But this is basically Lupita Nyong'o just wants to go and get this pizza. And going back to the main story there, that's what it's all about. And that might sound stupid, but it's just appreciating the things in life when the world is going to shit and when all hope is lost, you can still get them things that you used to love in life. And I love that little sub-story plot. But yeah, really surprising. A better story than I thought we were going to get. The only thing is, I don't think it expands the lore of A Quiet Place. They could have done something there to explain more about these alien invasion things. But they don't. It feels like a sidestep movie more than a progressive story. But after it, I was kind of like, I would like to see more of these movies taking place in different countries on different days, like maybe day 20 in Rome or something. Who knows? Maybe we'll get that. It just makes room for more movies, I think. But let's get A Quiet Place Part 3 next with Emily Blunt's characters and see what's going on with them. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. Quiet Place Day 1. Next up, we have one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Terrifier 3. Absolutely love what Damien Leone is doing here, not giving an absolute fuck about anything, and just making Arthur Clown this horror icon now, isn't he? I mean, I think he's established myself. Everyone loves Arthur Clown. But this one kind of expands on the first two movies with the story and leaves enough answers to make you want the fourth film as well. I like what Damien Leone is doing here. You know, he's building this story over these three or four, maybe 5 movies, and you can just see all the little breadcrumbs start to come together here and explain more who Art is and stuff. But anyway, most of us come to these movies to see Art tear shit up, and this is all taking place around Christmas time, which I thought was a great decision by Damien Leone. And it's kind of like Art the Clown coming to this town, which is at a joyful time, and he's just bringing this dark cloud over this town, basically. I think David Howard Thornton is awesome as this character. He gives so much personality to Art the Clown without even speaking. It's all done with the mannerisms and stuff, because he is a mime artist, of course. Man, he's awesome. I love Art the Clown. He's one of my favourite horror movie villains of all time now. And I know the first movie only came out a few years ago, but I will be there day one for any movie with Art the Clown in. And I like the return of Lauren Rivera and stuff. You know, the final girl from the second one. We got all that going on. Good against evil and stuff like that. The kills in this film are insane. Like, from the first 5 or 10 minutes, you know what you're in for with this movie. And it does not stop. And there's a shower scene in this film that everyone's been talking about. Yes, it is gruesome as hell. You won't believe what you're seeing. It stepped up the gears even more. There's so much gruesome, depraved stuff going on in here that this will not be for everyone. But me, I live for this shit. I love slasher movies, and I absolutely loved this one as well. Can't wait for Terrifier 4. That is Terrifier 3. Next up, we have Maxine, a movie that was a disappointment for a lot of people, but I absolutely loved X. Even when I watched Pearl again, it grew on me even more. I find that movie to be held in very high regard by myself now, even more on second watch. And I was so looking forward to this. I absolutely love Mia Goth as an actress. I will be seated for anything she is in. But I really wanted to see the story of Maxine Minx here. And we are taken to the 80s, which is a great time period, of course. But what I like about this is Ty West brought the dark side of LA here. Not the fun, vibrant vibe out of something like Lisa Frankenstein. He brought the dark, depraved side of Los Angeles here. And we kind of got like the Night Stalker killing people in the background in this movie, which just shows the backdrop of LA and how much of a seedy, horrible place it can be. And basically, Maxine is trying to make it in the movie industry after a successful porn career. And as she sort of gets this role for this new slasher movie, someone is trying to bring her past up and pull her back. And it kind of was like a metaphor for social media, I think. Every time someone makes it big in real life, people are always trying to bring them down on the internet and stuff like that. I think that's what it was trying to do here in the 80s time period. And it has so many giallo elements and stuff like that. You can see all the Dario Argento inspirations thrown in right here, with just showing the killer's gloves and stuff like that, his black leather gloves. But I just thought this was so entertaining, and I just had a great time throughout. You got Kevin Bacon in there as this hired detective with one of the funniest performances of the year, one of the best roles I've seen Kevin Bacon in. I absolutely loved him in there. You got Giancarlo Esposito, Mia Goth, of course. It's just a really fun, great, entertaining third part of this trilogy, and I think it's one of the best horror trilogies we've got now, and it all leads to a really fun climactic third act. So yeah, love seeing us on the Psycho movie set and everything like that. It explores Hollywood and, you know, the seedy side of it. I just had a great time with it. I loved Maxine. I know a lot of people were disappointed with it, but for me, I thought it was great. That is Maxine. Coming in number 3 now is another movie that didn't make my top 10 because I think this is more of a thriller, and that is Strange Darling. If you think it's a horror, that is fine. I think there's enough horror elements in here to make me include this, but I couldn't believe how good this movie was. Kyle Garner was really promoting this on the internet. I thought I better go and see this damn thing, and my God, man, I was blown away. This is kind of like Pulp fiction, the way it's told in out of sequence. So basically this movie will start with chapter 3, then it will jump to chapter 5, then chapter 1, and I'm like, that may feel pretentious and a director who's up his own ass, but no, it totally works. And by the end, you're like, I'm so glad they told that movie out of sequence, because otherwise it wouldn't have worked as well. We got Kyle Gallner in here. Willa Fitzgerald, I think her name is. Another fucking fantastic performance for the year. And I can't really explain too much what this is about because it will give too much away. But basically, it starts off with Kyle Gallner hunting her down, trying to kill her. But that is chapter 3. And I'm not going to say too much more than that, but there's lots of twists and turns along the way. And I just thought it made for such an awesome film. I was on the edge of my seat constantly. I was like, holy shit, we're going this way now, we're going that way. It just worked so well. One of the best directed movies of the year. I'm not going to say too much more, guys, but please, if you haven't, check out Strange Darling. It was exceptional. Next up, we have The Substance. A lot of people are absolutely loving this movie, and rightly so. Caroline Fargay, I think her name is, who directed this. Wow, what a job she'd done here. But she'd done so many social commentary on this movie as well about ageism and stuff that work so well. This sees Demi Moore's character, who's, man, what a fucking fearless role she put in here, as this celebrity who has her own TV show. But then when she hits 50, Dennis Quaid's character sort of fucks her off and says, yeah, we don't need you no more. We want a younger version of you. And she finds this drug on the black market that can bring out the younger, better version of herself. She decides to use it. And when that younger, better version of herself comes out, she takes over the show, basically. And it does lead to stories about sort of greed and sort of misusing things, because there are certain rules, and if you break them rules, things will start to go astray, and we go into this body horror element. And I was like, holy shit, this is one of the best body horror movies I have ever seen. I had such a great time with it. It was phenomenal. You know, Margaret Qualley as well. Let's not forget her, put another great performance in. Real solid trio there, Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid, and Demi Moore. But man, when we get into the body horror, I just couldn't take my eyes off it. It goes so over the top. When you think you've seen it all, it just throws more at you. And by the end, my cinema were just absolutely laughing their ass off with joy. And you could just tell everyone was so entertained. It was such a fucking great movie, man. I can't wait to watch this with my wife, who's never seen it. Yeah, gonna have a great time watching this again. So that is The Substance. What a very bold, unique take on the horror genre. Number 1, though, guys, is Alien Romulus. People have been saying to me, how can you put that at number 1 in my top 10 and stuff? But look, this is just my list, guys. I absolutely friggin' loved this movie. I am an Alien fan, and I've wanted a movie like this for such a long time. Now, granted, Prometheus and Alien Covenant worked for me a bit more on rewatch, but I've always wanted a blend of Alien and Aliens, and I think Fede Alvarez absolutely brought that to this movie. It had both the feels of them films. And it's just these like younger characters trying to escape the Whaling Corp. They want to go to this other planet, and they have to get stuck on this space station. But there are lots of facehuggers on there, and you know how the life cycle of the aliens work. And once one of these characters gets taken over the facehugger, the xenomorphs start to come and stuff. But yeah, it's a cool ass alien flick that I just really got invested in. And on this rewatch, I went to see this twice at the cinema. That's how much I loved it. I never do that with movies, but I went a couple of days later. I actually grew to like these characters even more. I think Kaylee Spaney was great as the main protagonist here. David Johnson put a great performance in as Andy the android. I like the way he has to become 2 different sort of personalities with his character when they put a different chip in and stuff. I thought he pulled that off so well. The alien action is awesome. There's a scene with some acid and stuff that they kind of have to navigate with gravity, and I thought that worked really well. But a lot of people complained about the 3rd act of this film, and it was probably my favourite moment of the entire year in this 3rd act. I thought Fede Alvarez absolutely brought the horror to this, and I'm glad he kind of went back to the horror roots, because there are some movies in here that are too much action orientated, but Fede Alvarez absolutely pulled it back into the horror genre. There are some moments that I don't like the get away from here, you bitch line, and the CGI on a certain character that was brought back who has actually died. That felt a little bit off. But all the other throwbacks I actually liked. A lot of people complain that there's too many, but I actually liked it. I'm a fan. Serve me. So there you go. But we could have done without that line of dialogue. For me, Alien Romulus was awesome. I hope he makes another one because I'll be there day fucking one. So number one is Alien Romulus. Hey guys, is there any movies that I missed here? You know, please do let me know if there's any I should check out. What did you think of this ranking? Remember, it's just my ranking. It's a personal opinion. No other ranking should match up with this one. So please do let me know. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Did you make it to the end? If you did, thank you very much. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel if horror is your sort of thing. Thanks so much, guys. You take care. I'll see you all in the next video.